Welcome back. Now to the bipartisan road trip I've been telling you about that's making headlines all across the country. All right, so you can see them here behind me, okay? We were supposed to hear them real quickly, but two congressmen from Texas, Republican Will Hurd and Democrat Beto O'Rourke, decided to rent a car to get back to D.C. after the winter storm canceled their flights. Their trip started here in San Antonio, taking them all the way to D.C., while live streaming the entire 1,600-mile journey. Their bipartisan road trip became a sort of town hall on wheels, and late last night, the two of them arrived back in D.C. So joining us by phone this morning are U.S. Representatives Will Hurd and Beto O'Rourke from Washington, D.C. Thanks for joining us this morning. I'm sure you're exhausted. It's a long drive.
It was a long drive, but Beto's a good driver, so we were in good hands yesterday.
We got a little bit of sleep last night, and we're refreshed and ready to go, getting back to work.
That is good to know. Okay, so you made it to your destination. I got to ask, is that what it takes now, a rental car, to finally get both sides of the aisle together and talk?
You know what? It seemed to work for us. Will and I have worked before on bills around infrastructure at the border, on the same page about not needing a border wall. But on some of the issues that require a little more conversation, improving access to veterans' health care, or thinking about our foreign policy, or what's going to constitute comprehensive immigration reform, that requires a couple of hours in the car together, and we got a lot more than that. We had 31 hours of driving time together from San Antonio to Washington, D.C., and beyond the policy issues, I got to know Will as a person. So I think I've got a partner now going forward to work on some of these things that our constituents sent us to Washington to do.
One of the unfortunate things that happens in Washington is you don't spend enough time with your colleagues from the other side of the aisle, and so this was a good example of doing that, and learning and really understanding the other person's motivations and what makes them tick and why they're doing the things that they're doing is really helpful.
Yeah, and I think you've inspired a lot of people, because not only are you setting an example for lawmakers, but just on a day-to-day to the everyday citizen, that it is okay to have different opinions and still get together, be friends, and talk about things. But I got to ask, were you guys friends before this? I mean, how did this whole road trip come about?
Well, Beto and I have known each other for 2 years. He's been in Congress one term longer than I have, and we've worked on a lot of issues together, but we've probably never had more than a 15, 20-minute phone conversation. We've spent time in El Paso, since he has the city of El Paso, I have some of the areas on the outside of the county. So we've known each other, but we definitely didn't know each other this well. I didn't know he loved donuts, or that he drives really, he likes to have his seat really close to the wheel when he drives. But it was great, doing things like when he talked to his wife, how his face would light up. And he's disciplined, and when he gets something in his head, he's gonna start. So if you ever want to get from point A to point B over a long distance, Beto O'Rourke's your guy.
And let me just add real quick that I think what made this interesting for people was, one, we had this set deadline. We had to get from San Antonio to Washington, D.C. by 6:30 on Wednesday. Two, we didn't really know each other that well. So are we going to be able to get along, make decisions together on where to stop, what to eat, where to sleep? And then three, were people going to want to join us for the ride and be able to ask questions or offer suggestions? All those things seem to work out. And, I also discovered that Will's a great guy who sees some things differently than I do, but I gained some insight into his perspective and why he does, and am comforted by the fact that he wants to get to the same place, quality, accessible health care, for example, or better serving our veterans, that I want to get to. He just sees a different path. And so
yeah, and I love that.
We can work together.
Yeah, sorry to cut you off. We're running out of time here real quickly, but I was just going to say it's great because you were actually able to address some very important issues during your drive and actually able to take questions from your constituents and talk to them about it. So what's next for you? Are you going to ditch the rental car on the way back and take a flight, or do you think you're going to make the drive back home together?
The journey, and we didn't televise this part of it, it actually ended after votes yesterday. Will and I drove the Chevy Impala back to the dollar rent-a-car counter at National Airport, dropped it off, cleaned it out, got a cab, and came back here. And here we are this morning. We're talking with you, and after this, we're going to go grab a bite to eat at breakfast, talk about some of the legislation that we discussed on the trip and see if we can write a bill or two together.
Absolutely. We talked about a bill that Beto is working on right now, and my legislative team and I are sitting down this morning to go over it. And hopefully by the next vote series, I'll be able to tell Beto if we're going to get on or not.
All right. Thank you again for joining us this morning. I think we can all learn something from this road trip that you two took together. Congressman Will Hurd, a Republican, and Congressman Beto O'Rourke, a Democrat. Thank you so much for joining us this morning, and look forward to speaking with you again sometime soon.
Thank you.
All right. Checking in with Stacia right now.